What's up? Welcome to the Godspeed Podcast. I'm Ryan. What's up, Jameson?
Hey, not too much. Do you notice how I look like I'm telling ghost stories at my house right now?
Dude, you look like you turned Ghost Studios from a studio.
Ghost Studios. Oh, that's a thing in Portland. I made an accidental reference. Anywho, we're back. This is our second episode of 2019, and I gotta say, our best one.
You think so?
Of 2019.
Well, we got a special guest for me, someone who's been a friend of the family for, so long. It's at least 25 years or more. So his name is Wilson Smith. He's a designer. He's a pastor. He's a teacher. He's an all-around good person. And I'm just glad that he was willing to sit down with me on my own without Jameson, which was definitely weird since you're the one with all the experience. Let's not
No, you did fantastic.
Hey, thanks, man. But it was cool just getting to talk to him. You know, he did a couple smaller TED Talks, so we kind of got into his work with what he calls adaptive athletes. It's people with disabilities that are athletes, and he's using his skills as a designer to help them make products for their events and stuff. So it was just really interesting to talk to him to see what's going on in his world right now.
Yeah, very different kind of guests for us to have. I wanted to ask, I mean, when you brought it up the first time, I thought, like, oh, this all sounds really interesting, but like, what's the fit for our show and stuff? And of course, after listening to it, I was like, oh man, this guy's like such an instantly likable guy too. Like listening to it, I was like, I wish I was there.
I wish you could have been there, but man, yeah, it's just, and we've been talking about this too. You know, we wanted to have like, and we've been talking to him, which from like Jamie from To Write Love, to have him on the show and to have a lot more people that are, you know, doing some really powerful things into the world, I think would be really cool. And Wilson's one of those guys that I see as, you know, as doing that right now. I'm just like, dude, he lives down the street. You know, he lives down the street. I need to finally get this going.
Yeah, and that's something that was a big appeal to me. Like after listening to it and hearing you talk about him was, you know, he's got this really cool job at. We can say where he works, right?
Yeah.
Okay. He's got this really cool job at Nike, which is like a dream job to a lot of people, just to work for that corporation, like in any way. But he's been there for years and years, and it kind of sounds like, you know, after a while, it didn't sound like he was like getting jaded or anything, but it sounded like a cool, like, refreshing thing for him to find like a new niche within that job that he's had forever. So
yeah, and to get to teach, he's a big Duck fan, so he teaches at the U of O, and they have like a campus downtown Portland where he's been teaching this adaptive design class where he works with students trying to come up with different products for special need athletes. I just think it's pretty amazing. And then, you know, his TED Talk, which I'll post in the description, it's really cool because his whole thing in his TED Talk is how to design with empathy. Empathy is his word that he chose. It's like how do you care for people with the gifts that you've been given, which is something. Yeah, it was just really cool to see because it's so easy just to be like, oh, you know, I've designed all these awesome shoes for all these huge stars, and you know, and that's kind of what my mode is. I don't really need to do anything else. Instead, like, it's gone the road of like, well, no, I'm going to use this gift to help other people and teach other people, and it's pretty amazing to see.
Yeah, and I mean, just to kind of give like the cool tease to all this. I mean, he's designed for, if I remember right, Michael Jordan, Serena Williams. Was there any other names? I mean, but like the top. This isn't just like some low level guy at Nike.
Yeah, no, it's people like that. He has, yeah, but man, you know, and then he's designed some stuff on his own. I think that was just you know, shoes that you'd recognize if you saw. You'd be like, oh man, no way, you know. And
jeez,
yeah, it's just a dude with a ton of creativity, and that's what we really hone in on here. Whether whatever background it is, whether it's author, you know, artist or comedian or whoever we have on, it's somebody who is honed into that creativity. And I think that's a big part of why I wanted to talk to him. It's just like, you know, how do you keep it fresh? How do you you know, keep it pure when you're tied to it financially? And, you know, and like, it's a lot of the stuff that we wrestle with the people we talk to already.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I wish after hearing it, I was like, man, you just want to be friends with this guy.
You do. And I'm glad I am.
Well, brag about it. I have more questions because I know that you had an interesting float tank experience, but maybe we'll tease with that. We can go into the interview, and then I want to hear about how you got stuck in a float tank.
Yes, let's talk about that. All right. Well, let's get into it with Wilson. Wilson, glad you're here. And
Yeah.
you sent me your TED Talk, which was awesome to get to watch. You get to talk about empathy and the way that you're showing it through your giftings with design and working with adaptive athletes, as you call them. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about you and you know what's going on with you and your creative outlet, because you are a designer. You're someone who is a pastor and leader in a church. Like, you got a lot of stuff going on. So I was like, man, I just want to sit down here and kind of get a glimpse into this dude that I'm really happy that I get to go have a beer and lives right down the street from me.
Oh man, hey, it's a thanks, man, Ryan. It's awesome. Likewise, all the way around. But I feel that these days in my life, what motivates me becomes very important. And now, the notion of empathy is something that I realize is a strong motivator for me when it comes to the world of design. And part of the way I've been able to experience that has been working with the adaptive community, which is the actually people who they've maybe their bodies were not were different, or maybe there would be a disability, there would be a challenge, and so there'd be an augmentation or something in their body, and so you would actually create products that help to enable these athletes to perform better in their sport or to do more. And so coming alongside of that has been a real exciting journey. I'm motivated these days. I'm motivated by thinking about people who don't have it as fortunate as a lot of us Americans. I mean, I remember at one point in time I heard that America being 4% of the world's population was consuming up to 50% of the world's resource.
It's true, I know.
which is kind of wild. And when you think about that, and there's the director of Architecture for Humanity, his name's Cameron Sinclair, and he wrote a book called Design for the Other 90%. And I like that kind of thinking, design for the other 90%. The reason being is that the world, only 10% of the world actually gets to partake in things that are designed. And so designing for the other 90% means you're actually considering the rest of the world that doesn't have the benefit of someone who's trained or of actually, of design stuff. So I'm caring more about the marginalized and caring about the people who are outside of that. And I even think that it's interesting, even in today's world. I mean, we've got kind of an interesting equation going up top with just would say that some of the points of views of President Trump and then also the right or whatever. But I think I look at it as an opportunity. It's not like the glass is half empty. I think it's an opportunity. What it does is, I say we probably wouldn't even have a Me Too if it wasn't for the president we have right now. And that's been a great thing. I feel that a lot of the marginalized people, their story comes to the forefront more because of the contrast of perhaps what the philosophies are happening up top right now.
Sure.
So I see that as a benefit. So I'm actually kind of enjoying the loudness because I believe it's ultimately going to be better for us all.
Oh, totally. And I think that, I think you're right on with that. What's going on is it's kind of exposing who we are and where we're at.
Right.
And why it's a little ugly right now.
Yeah.
It's going to provoke this response, which is what we need. It's almost like, whoa, you're looking at leadership and some of the people that are just kind of believing everything. You're kind of like, okay, this is kind of a thermometer showing that things are rough right now,
Right.
So
it's amazing how much I would say even as you may think that leadership or something is controlling, it is such a reflection of us, and it becomes such a kind of a litmus test, perhaps, of where we are at, even as individuals. And I find it really, really fascinating. I get kind of excited. I think it's kind of interesting, just even, me being a black man, and then I was so thrilled that we would go through 8 years with a black president. That was something I never dreamed I would see, and so then to experience that, let alone, it's interesting. not only an outstanding man as Obama is, but just that a person who maybe didn't come from such understandable places that Americans are looking at or that we think. Mm-hmm. He didn't come out of the box that we would love for him to have come out of necessarily. And I think that's kind of good. And I even think his name, Obama, was kind of an interesting challenge for people, and, for a while. And I remember one time I saw a Obama Biden stand in front of a house, and I was like, and I drove by kind of quickly, but first I saw Obama Biden, and I thought it said, Osama bin Laden.
That's what his name looked like. I know.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Yeah. So I just think it was wonderful how it was kind of like right in the face of America, but it forced us to kind of deal with what really matters and what is truth, what's really happening. And it's interesting to go from him and then to who we have there now, and how that's kind of a reflection of how we've kind of how there's a shift. I'm not saying it's also horrible, because I think everybody's perspective is different, but I think it does speak loudly, and I think it does show us ourselves. It's a reflection.
Oh, totally. But I think it's crazy. You go, to me, when I saw Obama, is something that's like, wow, look at how far we've progressed, right? Like to the point where, we have a black president, which is this is great, wonderful, right. And then just to have it go so hard the other direction,
yeah, totally,
is something where I feel like I'm still kind of spinning, where like I don't understand what just happened.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, and that's the thing where it's just like I don't get how, I don't know. It's almost like there's a part of us that is just, it's ready to progress and to move, and there's also this other part of us that is just locked in, like, no, we're digging our heels in, because that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, totally.
You had people in rural America that were like stepping up to vote, right, because of what happened. And I don't know. I think you're right. I think it is kind of showing where we're at in the people that are here, and it's hard because I feel like it's so easy to to point the finger at other people, when in reality we got to point it at ourselves because we're part of the group.
That's awesome, Ryan. There's a book that I've recently listened to. I got a friend, we walk and we listen to books, and there's a book called Why Liberalism Failed. But the great thing about the book, and it actually had a foreword, Obama did part of the foreword, but when it says liberalism, it's not speaking about left. Liberalism is an American dream where liberty and justice for all, and there's both left and right sides of liberalism, and we are Americans, and we feel somewhat entitled, and and we're liberal. Liberty is something that, yes, liberty for all. But the problem with liberty for all a lot of times is it can become very selfish, and it can become very about me, and liberty, and so why liberalism is failing is because it feels entitled, it feels selfish, it's and it can be if you're conservative, it takes on a very protective thing. You want to build a lot of walls, you're kind of, because you want to protect your stuff, and then if it's not conservative, it can maybe be more about lifting up others who maybe aren't taking care of themselves. So anyway, it's kind of, it's an interesting thing, but liberalism as a philosophy fails because it's not the bottom line truth. It pretends to be. Liberalism as a thought feels like, hey, we're humanity, we're liberal, we should be liberated. But that's not necessarily we're not perfect.
Sure. I think it kind of goes back to what you were talking about with your TED Talk, is where you've been put in a position where, you've had a lot of things go really fortunate for you, where you've got a really great job, and then you're turning back and looking at it now as, I've been blessed with a lot, right? And you're saying that a big part of your passion now is wanting to help the people that haven't, to the point where if someone wants to check out his TED Talk, it's a TEDx talk in Portland that's about empathy with redemptive athletes. I'll put the link below, but like you show in that video how like you're using your design talents to like it. There's a part with the guy in the pool who his legs are all messed up, and like you help design something where like he's been able to swim.
Yeah, right.
You know, like stuff like that, which is amazing to use your talent to give back, because it's a part of like realizing how much you've been blessed and realizing there's other people that haven't, and that maybe a part of you and a part of your calling as a person is to give back in whatever way that is.
Interesting. That's cool, Ryan. I think the wonderful thing about empathy, I think we all learn it probably even around Christmas time, is it's so much more fun to kind of give than to even receive, you know.
Totally.
And so you know, so the notion of empathy is a real natural, almost, I wouldn't almost say selfish, but something. It's a very good thing for you. It's great for the soul.
Yeah.
And I love what it does, and it's also, the more that I see it as a place of maybe understanding, or a place of, it helps me to get into other people when I'm empathetic about them, empathetic towards them, and maybe helps me to get out of myself, I guess, which is also a good thing. But yeah, so I see a lot of value with that, and so the great thing about these adaptive athletes, which is so amazing, inspiring, and what I really found was when I was working with, and I've had the joy from Nike, where I work as a designer, I've had the joy of, over the years, working with some of the greatest athletes around, working with an Andre Agassi or Pete Sampras, then lately more like Serena Williams, Maria Sharapova, different athletes, as well as Mr. Jordan. Worked with Michael Jordan on a couple shoes, and actually on the Jordan brand and a couple Air Jordans. But and it's been amazing to work with all these incredible athletes. But the thing I found with the adaptive athletes is there's something in their spirit that is no different from any of those great athletes I've worked with, which says to me something about all of humanity. There's a drive, and if you really apply yourself, and if you want to overcome whatever challenge you have in life, you can do it. And so these great athletes are really great examples of overcoming that we all are capable of. And then in the same way, adaptive athletes are no less inspiring, no less engaged, and just wonderful to work with.
Oh man, I bet. God, because I just seeing that video from your TED Talk of just that guy with his legs, and like, I already don't like swimming as it is. Yeah. But like to do something like that, where you see these people that are willing, they're like, I'm not gonna let this slow me down.
Right.
I'm gonna give it my all.
Right. Well, he has a neuromuscular challenge in his body where basically his muscles are starting to kind of give up or they're starting to not work. But he has a great personal phrase where he says, if you don't use it, you lose it, and he chooses to look at it more from the glass half full, and he goes for it, and so he keeps moving, and so movement becomes part of his lifeblood to keep moving, and so in that same way, I think it's real important. I get inspired by these adaptive athletes because they keep going and going for it despite things, and it helps me to look at my own stuff and say, in this area you need to be really grateful and thankful, and it maybe inspires me to do better in other areas of my own life. So yeah, I find the adaptive athletes really inspiring.
Sure.
In terms of a giving back quality, what I like about also this program. So what it is, actually, I'm working with University of Oregon, and we have a product design program that came out of the architecture school. And so out of this product design program, we were trying to figure out what kind of equation, what kind of design challenge could we give to the students, which would allow them to flourish for a portfolio piece that they can then take to a potential employer and show them who they're all about. And so as we were talking about it, we were thinking it'd really be great to have students connect with more of an end user, like someone who's actually going to use the product, have more like of that kind of quality, that kind of opportunity, because that doesn't always happen in an academic setting. You don't always
Sure.
get the chance to connect with the end user.
Yeah.
You can be more hypothetical with it, but so it was an opportunity to connect with the end user. So in dreaming about that, suddenly a friend of mine, a co-teacher, his name's Bob Lucas, we were working on the project together, and Bob said to me, and as we were working with the department head, Kirsten and Munsinger as well, working with her. But anyway, Bob Lucas says, how about adaptive product, adaptive design enabling athletes with disabilities? And we were like, yes, that's it. Because the great thing about that is suddenly we're working with an end user that's in need. So they have a need. The students have a need for a really great portfolio piece. And as this equation's going on, the potential employers looking at their portfolio and looking at what they're doing, and the employer is rooting, is feeling empathetic towards the adaptive athlete, and so everybody's it's a win-win. It becomes a kind of a circular thing where everybody's benefited. Hopefully the athlete will get a product out of it, the student will get an amazing portfolio piece out of it, and the employer will get a deeper insight into the student and the skills that they have. So
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing, man, because I don't know, I don't know, I feel like myself, I've been so blessed as it is, where I don't even know that many people that struggle with that kind of stuff. And just to see, I working in construction, and just to see, some people that have been affected, and, where their bodies have been damaged and stuff like that, where
right.
it's hard to bounce back from something like that, where I can't imagine learning about a disease where your muscles are, atrophying, and you can't, like, what that would do to you.
Right.
So to go through this process and think like, oh, not only is it, you're not going to let him slow you down, like you said, that guy, if you don't use it, you lose it. Yeah. Where he's pressing on, but then to have somebody like you that could come in and be like you're jumping on board when these guys are already, overcoming these obstacles, and you're just like the wind in their sail when they're getting into these athletic events. So what
Right.
are some of these other athletic events? Like, I mean, are there races? Are there Special Olympics? Is that?
Well, it's kind of all of it. I think that adaptive design can involve. I mean, in some ways, okay, as being a shoe designer, and as a designer, I try to look at the whole landscape. But in designing shoes, you're basically trying to create things that help you to actually engage in a sport. So say if we were just walking around barefooted in a jungle or something, it may be okay because the ground is soft enough. But because you're playing football on a turf field or whatever, you need a certain kind of something between you, the game, and the field, and the movements and the various things you're doing. So you've got to kind of create this kind of interface, which is the shoe that works for all these things. And that goes for a basketball shoe, that goes for a running shoe, that goes for anything you're engaging in. And so what I look at is we're all adaptive to some degree. We're all trying to enable ourselves to move better in movement, in sport. I mean, if you're working on a building, and you're standing out there on a beam, 300 feet above the ground, you make sure you have something under your feet that is basically working for that environment.
Sure.
I mean, you're not, or you make sure the rest of yourself is locked in or harnessed in some way, and so you're adapting to that environment because you're dealing with gravity and everything else that could be a challenge if things weren't harnessed well. And so in the same way, designing for adaptive athletes, you're just basically taking augmented bodies, or people who have a different body and a different body, and so you have a different opportunity to address design that works for them. And it's just and honestly, if you look at the realm of possibility, it's a slight change from even who we are. We're all slightly adapting, because we're all marching towards death, and there's all challenges physically and everything else that just kind of continue to evolve.
Sure.
And so anyways, we're always adapting.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah. So
talking about that, So what inspires you going forward, like with stuff like this? What is your inspiration, like using, like you said, you've designed shoes, you've worked with adaptive athletes, you're doing TED Talks, you're teaching. Like what's your inspiration going forward? Is it just to use your talents to help the marginalized? Is that what you're talking? Like, I mean, is that what you see? If your vision for the next 10 years, is it getting more involved in like University of Oregon or something? Or like, what do you see?
Interesting. My vision, I mean, there's one, a philosopher who I really respect, Carl Jung, and he would talk about, sometimes I go back to philosophy thinking about it. He would talk about 4 stages of life, and then the 4 stages that he talks about is initially the stage of the athlete. Ironically, he said the athlete is kind of like maybe you're coming into your body, so that's kind of the first stage. The first 20 years. It doesn't really give an age group, but there's the athlete. The second stage he calls the warrior, and the warrior is one who's kind of like trying to amass and trying to own and build and grow. That could be where you're doing family and you're expanding and you're trying to amass, and so you're kind of this warrior conquering. The third phase, he says, is the stage of meaning. And the stage of meaning isn't so much how much you can amass and conquer, but it's almost more like how much you could give away or how much depth you can have. And it's more about stage of meaning is more like a release, and it's more like, hey, I would rather be about giving than just amassing. And the fourth stage he calls the stage of the spirit, where it's like you look at all 3 and kind of go, oh, in some ways each of those 3 are not necessarily the final answer, physical or warrior or meaning, but you're kind of like you're about ready to die maybe, and your world is not here, it may be somewhere else, and so you're kind of more of a sage. And so I would say I'm kind of in the meaning to sage phase of my life, and I want to be about passing on to the next generation. I want to be about helping others kind of see the possibilities outside of me,
sure, or
outside of ourselves. I think we can all be very much motivated about ourselves, and then at some point in time, you're motivated more about how you can help others, I guess.
Oh, I gotcha. So for you, I know I said earlier that my family's known Wilson for a long time, and it started with Portland Foursquare with my grandfather, and then my parents, and then seeing you move to South Lake. So, I mean, is that part of it? Is that part of it, getting involved in church?
I think so. Yeah, I think church is an interesting, what would I say? I almost want to say a petri dish, but I think church can be an interesting thing where you get people together, and at least the way we do church in America or whatever, you gather together for 90 minutes or maybe 64 minutes, but you get together and hopefully maybe align yourself with the ideals that you value and that you hope for, and so and really hopefully connect with God, and so basically that's what that's all about, and I think for me personally, I think it's a practice zone. I know that when I started out kind of being a music guy with your grandfather and others at church, I was really excited personally about wow, who God possibly could be, and is he really who I think he is? And if he is, I got really excited, and so it's really great to tell that story, and for me to dance and sing and do whatever else in church and lead music. So that became a real interesting thing. But I think as I go further along the path, I realize that actually what I'm doing for that hour and for that 75 minutes or whatever that we're together is not really all of life. That's just that one experience, and really it's almost like everything else is almost all is where I can really live it out.
Sure.
And so then I think it's kind of, I've started to see more and more value in who I am and what I get to do. And so even though the story started with maybe some joy that I wanted to share with the people in church, it's expanded into the joy that I want to share with the whole world somehow.
That's cool. Yeah, because I know, I mean, you are involved in a lot of different, you have your hands in a lot of things, right? I mean, you are you are a busy dude in terms of the things that you do. Where I feel like a big part of that, and just knowing you, is you have a lot of relationships, and a big part of that in that stage of life that you're talking about right now is investing in those.
Well, yeah, thanks, Ryan. I mean, I'd say for me, I've kind of had a different path than a lot of people. I never got married. I don't have kids. It's beautiful to watch your life and see what you're doing, and to watch your kids and your wife and everything you're all about, and that's amazing. And I'm in your balcony cheering always, but that wasn't my journey. And so I'm kind of at this place where, I don't know, legacy and kind of who I am and what I'm about can be very invested outside of my personal life. I could just get a Maserati and drive to the end of the earth, but that's not interesting enough. And so really right now for me, I've been given all this opportunity. I feel really healthy, and it's just a chance to give out. So there is kind of a, I feel like it's fun to still maintain my Nike experience, which really is a lot more about the rest of the company. Having been there 35 years now, I'm much more about, say, other Nike employees and kind of bringing them up. And so in a kind of leadership role there, and then what I get to do with the students, it's so awesome, and still what I do at church. So there's a lot of things I get to participate in these days.
That is really cool. And that's one thing I've always enjoyed about you, Wilson, because you've always been somebody who has been involved with my family, from my grandfather, my dad, to me and my brother. And it's been awesome, man, because as we've gone through our struggles trying to figure out business, you've always been a great resource for, especially me. And I know with my dad and my brother, that it's been great to have someone to be able to be like, hey, this is kind of what we're going through. Help me kind of forecast, help me see what's going on here, because you are someone who does have a really good outlook on things. That's what I've always appreciated. Wilson and I have sat watching R.C. Sproul's talking about God, trying to figure out, what religion is with all my different experiences and in his, and it's just been great to be able to have somebody to bounce stuff off of. So I think a big part of what you have to give is that, where you could just sit there and conversate openly, and I've always felt that from you, is that empathy, where you're just sitting there, you're just there because you want to be there. It's not because you're sitting there trying to make me go to South Lake or something like that.
No
what I mean?
No way. What I love about the Pottle family, I mean, from your dad to your grandfather to yourself, I've been close with each of you guys and your brother. I think, what would I say? I just like that, maybe because your roots come from, to me, the back east, and your roots are in steel, and I think there's a lot of truth. There's a lot of you guys pretty much lay it out there. You're all kind of you just kind of honestly, you live life a little bit more out loud, and I find that really refreshing. It's I think here in the Northwest, we can hide behind a lot of our kind of, it's way different than the East Coast. So, and I find it really refreshing to find someone who's forthright and straightforward and not quite as nervous about being real. And so, but you guys are definitely not that. You're just the opposite, it's a total kick. So I love that. And I love the way it's expressed in different ways, would say all four of you guys, from your brother, your dad, to your grandfather, to you. And so it's expressed differently in each of you guys. And I think that's been pretty fun to observe.
And I know we've appreciated it too. But no, man, it's just getting to sit here and do this interview with you is just cool, because it's always something I've been observing in you, is kind of okay, what's Wilson's next step gonna be? You know what I mean? Because just watching you go from so many different things, and you do have so many different talents, where it is something just to constantly watch and just see where you're gonna invest that next talent. You know what I mean? So
it's interesting. Let me show you one that's kind of, and I know maybe it's not wise for me to get up, but there's a painting that I did, and it's interesting. It's a painting of Jesus. And what had actually a friend had done before, he had, let me see, let me lay it right here. He had created this painting of just this exuberance. It was such a wonderful expression, but it was actually kind of like this white guy who was probably a little bit more of a what would I say? Like a little bit more of an outdoorsy mountain kind of guy. And then so my friend Chris Breithaupt, he created this painting, and it was outstanding. But it almost reflected him. It looked like him. It kind of and in a sense, I think Jesus helps us to come in contact, hopefully, more with ourselves and who we actually are. Well, I asked Chris, because he had done it on a computer. I asked him. I said, "Hey, is there a way you could just like?" I love the painting. I want to buy it from you. I want to print, but I said, could you just maybe make him a little darker, or could you just kind of make him? I just kind of want him. I want him to be brown. I love the exuberance. I love the expression. And so he was. And so then when he sold it to me at the last minute, he says, "Hey, sorry, I could not adjust the program." And so I was like, well, okay. But I got it home. I hung it up, but it just wasn't me. So I got out my acrylic paints and I just made it darker.
Did you really?
And so I painted him, and I kind of changed his hairstyle a little bit, and I kind of worked on his nose, and I did different things to kind of reflect more of who I am. And it was fun. And for me, it was fun to kind of make, as much as I think that Jesus wants to relate to us, and part of the reason he came to be a man, and he was likely brown. I mean, where he came from. But regardless, I wanted to identify with him a little better, and so I love this painting because it's got joy, it's got expression, it's a release, and he's brown. Anyway.
Wow, yeah, that's great. I'll throw that up on the social media so other people can see what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Since I was gonna live stream this, but decided we're just not at that point yet.
Yeah.
Where we're trying to make that happen on our side, but it's
cool. Cool.
But wow. So do you see yourself painting anything like that? Is that something that?
I guess for me, once again, that's another creative expression. I love taking on and understanding new creative expressions and new opportunities in creativity. Like recently, I for the longest time, I kind of came up in traditional Motown like music. So my music experience, my dad owned a record shop. He owned the black record shop in Portland. It was called Bob City Records.
Oh, no way.
So he owned Bob City Records. We would bring in like Marvin Gaye or the Supremes or James Brown. All these people he would bring in concert-wise, because they'd be touring, either coming up or down from Seattle or up from San Francisco. And so they would come through Portland and do a stop. And so he'd do their shows here. And so we would pick them up at the airport. And I remember like picking up Marvin Gaye at the airport. And,
no way.
Yeah, it was totally crazy. I mean, we would pick up Marvin Gaye. And in fact, it was the mid 60s. And I remember I walked to the Portland airport, and he was just standing there in the middle of the crowd. But back then it was odd because black and white people didn't really look at each other. They kind of looked away from each other. And I remember as a little kid thinking, boy, if you guys would just look up, there's Marvin Gaye. You're just kind of you're not looking at him. I mean,
crazy.
There he is. But anyway, so we picked up Marvin Gaye, and we took him back to the hotel or whatever. And we actually kind of connected with him. But anyway, but I grew up in this world of Motown music, which was fun, and music played a big role in my life. And so then, lately, I would say, music always reflects the society where it's kind of going from the culture that it's a part of. And hip hop was something I didn't necessarily fully get yet or understand because I didn't maybe live completely in those challenges. I was much more fortunate, I think, with my family. And so I didn't quite push against the culture in the same way. But recently, I was really, really taken by the story of Hamilton that was expressed by Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yeah.
I mean, it was outstanding, and it really taught me. I learned hip hop, maybe like a lot of white people. I learned hip hop from Hamilton, and it was really cool. And so I kind of, for at least 2 or 3 years, I was that's all I would listen to. I mean, I love that whole story. And so that to me, so I love new creative expression because a lot of times it teaches me about so much. And so I felt I learned so much about the culture. I learned so much about hip hop from engaging in it. So it became a new art form. So now, when I'm, so I love to go off on that on occasion.
So I know you are a performer and you sing and you dance. Do you ever write anything yourself?
Do I ever write anything myself? It's interesting. I think the first point from point A to B or whatever is to try to understand a concept, then it becomes a whole nother thing to actually engage and create inside of the concept. I think for me, it's, I understand it. I think with Hamilton, I now perform it, so I can do some of it, so performance becomes maybe that second step. To actually create it myself is a whole nother step.
Sure.
And and I think that I've learned how to do that with things like, I was trained as an architect, so at University of Oregon, so architecture is a place that I can go to create and design. And naturally, I'm very confident in that. I'm confident in shoe design. I'm confident in painting. I'm confident in a lot of areas of music. I'm maybe not writing music as much yet, but I can perform it, and I don't, anyway. So when it comes to actually, writing music, that has not exactly happened yet.
Gotcha. But what is your, what do you tap into to keep that creative outlet flowing? Because we talk to a lot of different creative people, whether it's comedians, authors, artists, whatever, right? And the big thing is especially artists where your finances are tied to your creativity, it tends to be something where it's hard to stay true to that, keep your inspiration going. What does it look like for you to tap into that creativity?
Awesome. Lots of I look at things pretty practical. I take a step back and I say, okay, so that I don't have to necessarily depend on my artistry to pay for my rent or whatever, I'll say, okay, I have my vocation and my avocation. And so my vocation for me is also the thing that's actually paying the bills.
Yeah.
My avocation is maybe my passion, the piece that I'm really, really, really into. And so so I would say that because the great thing about it, if your avocation is not dependent on paying your bills, then you can be a little bit more true to the avocation. You can just really just go for it. So for me, when I do music at church, it's great. I'm not depending on the church to pay for my house. I've got my other job,
Sure. Yeah.
And so then I can just be free to worship or to do music or to share my gifting. And so the same way with University of Oregon, when we're working with adaptive athletes, those are all avocational. That's not the bottom line to what I need.
Yeah.
I let Nike and others kind of pay for things I'm doing because that's my vocation. And so I think that sometimes one of the struggles with artists is if they depend so much on their art to take care of their lives. I think there needs to be you need to kind of look at it maybe in two buckets, and then you can maybe be a little free, and then at some point in time, once you've created your great art that people really, 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 really love, a lot of times your avocation can then pay for your life.
Yeah, because we talk to a lot of people with labels, and their labels a lot of times will take their sound and be like, all right, we need to tweak this a little bit so we could get it to a bigger audience,
right?
And then a lot of times you hear the artists go, okay, I'm not cool with that, and then they'll walk away from their label or something like that, and it becomes a thing where it's tainting the artist just a little bit, they're sacrificing who they are and what they want, and I think that's the biggest thing is making sure what you're doing is pure, you're getting yourself out there, once it becomes about paying the bills or trying to reach people or whatever, then it slowly slippery slope down to where it's not really your art anymore, what I mean? It's your art in the sense you're putting it out, but it's not you, you're making it for someone else.
Exactly. No, it's awesome. Right. Yes. I mean, it's interesting. I think the closer we can orbit around truth, the better we all are. And it's kind of like I know that I mean, it happens even when we're designing products for athletes. That's one of the cool things. Sport is a pretty honest thing. I mean, when it comes right down to it, you're trying to score a goal against someone else, and all the rules are out there and they're pretty clear, and so you gotta do it. And so when that's the basis, then you got to be pretty honest with the products. You got to be pretty honest with all sorts of things, and in sport, it's very important to keep things as honest as possible. And I think that's allowed for a lot of products to be pretty good in the sporting industry sometimes, because it does need to work generally. And I think that when you have other motivations that enter into stuff, like commercialization or whatever, then that can start to cloud the truth, really. And so I think it is important, because the thing that we ultimately all want is we all are looking for, I think, that truth. We're looking for those nuggets of realness that we can apply to our own selves, and can take us to the next level. And we all know when it's not that way, and we all can become skeptical. And it doesn't matter what area. And I remember there were times even in the footwear area in designing shoes. I mean, shoes coming out of the blocks, there was a lot of truth in them, and then a lot of times maybe there's a lot of expression. And sometimes it got so crazy that people, hold it. They went back to classics because they're like they that's something they can believe in, because it was before trying to sell a bunch of expression became the thing. And so it's kind of so we know that intuitively. I think humanity all kind of gets it on certain levels. And sometimes we want expression because expression is part of, we love beauty too. We love to make a statement. So nothing's wrong with that. But we know where the truth is, and we're looking for that.
So do you think that's part of your, to kind of wrap everything up here, do you think moving forward that's kind of your goal with what you're doing now, is just to kind of bring that truth, help people find that, whether it's with adaptive athletes or some of the groups and the stuff that you're doing, that's the inspiration behind what's driving you during this stage of life?
That's pretty insightful, Ryan. I've never thought of it that way, because I think, even though I think empathy is a noble goal, empathy for empathy's sake isn't everything. I think that ultimately the notion of motivated from truth feels even like a bigger thought, and feels like a great goal to try to help people find their truth, or to help people to a place of truth. I can look around me, and I think that I really think that's what's ultimately motivating us on a lot of levels. And I just think that's a great goal. That's what we need.
I'm with you, man. That's a big part of doing this podcast, and the other one I do is just to provoke that in people, because to bring it back, kind of what we were talking about with our country and where it is right now.
Right.
People will almost believe anything.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and I think I just think there's an insight that we need to see that's the case.
Right.
Accept it, and ask ourselves why. Where's our roots? Why? What do we believe? Why do we believe it? Because it seems like it's something that's really important. Where we shouldn't be mad at Facebook for putting bad ads because we know they're bad ads.
Right.
But instead we're like, no, Facebook's the devil. Right? They're doing this. Right. But the problem is us. We're believing this stuff. That's not true.
Right.
So it's a matter of how do you do that? How do you keep that conversation going? How do you help people get to a place where they're figuring it out? They're working with it. They're okay with the fact that they don't know something.
Right. Well, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I would say if something was fascinating, some of what you're saying there triggered in me. If something was fascinating to me from the last campaign, of course, me being a black man who's fairly well off, I love the Obama administration. And so when I saw the campaign rhetoric around "Make America Great Again," I was thinking, really? It's not great now. And if you think about it, it feels greater than it was 8 years ago when we were forwarded from, things like 9/11 and other things, granted, that really kind of helped destroy or really fought against, I think, during the Bush administration. But but we were pretty low. We were pretty low in a recession coming out of that, and so my thought was, so make America great again, and then to see that ruffled up enough energy in America to actually be a rallying cry that won. Shows you that people, there are a lot of people seeking truth, and that's, for them, that was the truth.
Yeah.
And so who am I to say, okay, well, they're really wrong, but other than just say, okay, truth is an interesting thing that we're all coming up different sides of the mountain, and maybe we're all looking at it in a little different perspective, and then to think, okay, how can I then help people to see what is the ultimate truth? Maybe there's some ultimate truth that we don't see from either side of the mountain, and maybe there's something else we can pursue that's maybe looking up or looking in a slightly different direction.
I totally agree, man. And especially in the world I'm in construction, I feel like it's there's so many people that are in that camp of like believe just about anything they read, to the point where it's just like, dude, that's not real or true. But I don't want to get to a place myself where I'm just like looking at like, oh, I'm going to discount everything this person says, because I think that's kind of the danger of where we're at right now. We have two camps pulling further and further apart, where we have to treat each other with that respect.
Right.
You know what I mean? That like they're figuring out, they may have some stuff that's a bunch of crap that they believe, but they also have a lot of stuff that's legitimate.
And not only do we have two camps where they're pulling further and further apart, but I think if we're increasing in anything, we're increasing in understanding manipulation, which is actually maybe a dark art, but a bad art. But the notion of manipulation, which maybe is some people call it marketing, especially marketing when it comes to kind of manipulative marketing. We love to we can trick people and motivate them to maybe respond a certain way through marketing. So I tend to, these days, I look at everything and I think, okay, not only what am I listening to or what am I observing, but why, and why did they do that, and what are they trying to tell me? And so I'm so skeptical that I can't watch anything. I can't read anything without why, and what are you trying to do? Because we have become so shrewd when it comes to our marketing, and so if you're on the left or the right, it doesn't so much matter. I think the underbelly can be pretty sinister if it's trying to be manipulative.
Man, I totally agree, and it's just something where that perspective is something where I want to shine a light on, because I feel like that is a much healthier approach to our world today with the amount of information we have to try to process.
Exactly.
And
I mean, Facebook. I can't look at a post without actually thinking why.
Yeah.
And I think, and in that way, it helps me to maybe look at less posts.
I know, but it's just this streamline of info can be really overwhelming. But Wilson, thank you. This was awesome, man. Is there anything you want to end with?
Oh, anything I want to end with? Well, I love the value of empathy towards one another, but let's all know we're trying to find the ultimate truth, and I think that's our biggest goal.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan.
All right. That was Wilson. Jameson, what you think, man?
Really good. Like I said before, I just want to be his friend. So maybe next time I come over, he'll accidentally show up, and we'll get to talking.
That's right. And we'll break bread together. But
yeah,
no, dude, awesome guy. I'm just to be able to talk to him like that was really cool. I'm glad that he was willing to do that. It's definitely not an easy thing. Put yourself out there, especially, we talk to a lot of people that are doing interviews all the time, that are just seasoned vets at doing it. And, with him, I think, especially with me there, where it's more personal, it's just, it's a little more raw, I guess.
Yeah.
So
it's a good practice though on the whole, like, ideally you'd forget that the mic is there and that it's just two people talking and two friends talking, which I think it got there for sure.
I think it did, especially with some of the politics stuff. I hope people saw, it wasn't just about politics. It was more, It was more about the stuff behind it. But the thing that I really got from it was, that this whole idea of empathy and, not just using your talents or your creativity for empathy, but, being a part of what you do and stuff like that. Because for me, like in my crazy job and what I do in construction, it's really easy to forget that like these people in these other trades are people too, and not just dudes that are in your way or just pissing you off or whatever, because, it's especially with like iron workers and let's say like carpenters, not to get into the whole blue collar realm for all those who really care about what construction life is like, but it's easy just to be like, oh, screw you, I ain't helping you with anything, right? But I think my approach in terms of like really jumping into that empathetic approach is like I really try to be helpful, and it's like the golden rule all the time. If I see someone struggling with their cart, man, I will always be the first to help them out. You know what I mean? It's just like, because sometimes construction is so hard as it is. Like, it's just there's difficult circumstances, and I'm like, I realize I have my team of iron workers, but I also look at it more of like we're all on this job together, right? You know what I mean? Where some dude's struggling, I'm just not gonna walk by him and not do anything. I'm gonna help him even though it's not my job.
Well, you would hope that that's an innate thing with most people, but yeah, it's definitely not. I mean, there's the little situations where you see like, an old lady struggling with her groceries or something, and you're like, like how can I just walk past that? Like I would feel more awkward walking past that than going up to a stranger and being like, do you need some help?
Yeah.
But it's not to brag, but I just feel like that should be a somewhat innate thing in human beings.
But in a world like the one we're in, it's so easy for guys to not do that. You know what I mean? Like, screw that plumber. That guy was a dick to me yesterday, or like he ate all the shit in the way. Like I'm not doing anything to help that guy. Instead of looking, I'm like, no, dude, he's a human being. You're trying to figure it out. Especially, dude, because a lot of the guys are so rough that I'm around. Yeah. Like I almost got in the fight the other day with this framer because like I went over there like trying to be like empathetic, like, hey, dude, let me help you with your cart, and his attitude was garbage. And my fault is I let his shitty attitude suck me right into my own shitty attitude. So I was like, pretty much like, F you then, and then it turned to this whole thing where he's like, you're lucky this is work. And I'm like, it gets so bad, but it's just the point of how easy it is just to get to that place of just like, where you're just someone in my way, or you're not going to help me.
Well, and for the most part, I mean, it's no secret that my job isn't my favorite thing in the world. But on the days where I can really like try to be empathetic, and I'm always going to still run into some jerk. I'm always still going to get someone that's, not on the same page. But for the most part, I know that if I can stick to that, it does make my day easier. Like it does make those calls a lot easier, a lot smoother if I'm just being nicer and not trying to rush through things or be like, yeah, well, you can't do that, so what are you gonna do? Let's go. Like even though it's gonna take more effort on my end, more like brain power and energy and voice, even when I'm tired, it usually makes the situation go more smoothly, and it's just still a really hard thing to do. And just like you come into work and the first thing that happens is something terrible or someone's rude to you. You're just like this guy sucks. This guy was rude to me. Therefore, I hate everybody today, and everyone's gonna feel it.
It's true. It's hard because I just have realized, and as someone who has struggled with a bad attitude in this area for so long, that like it's just I don't want to be like that. You know what I mean? I look at it as I'm around broken people all the time, and I guess when you see somebody, when like talking to Wilson, is you see someone who's rising above to the sense where like they're all about showing people that they care. They're going the extra mile, and that's what I want to do at work too. But I mean it's a lot harder in my circumstance because they're just rough, tough dudes, and a lot of guys that don't want your help in the first place. And it's almost like it shows you as weak by helping. You know what I mean? Where like most iron workers are like the tatted up dudes that you just don't talk to if you're from a different trade. Where I have I'm the complete opposite of that.
I wish your 5 minutes of comedy was online somewhere just to hear the jokes you made about your work.
It was at one point, and then I buried it so deep.
No. Oh, good thing we have a new YouTube channel. I'm going to find it and post it. Yeah, that was something that's really encouraging to hear from someone like Wilson. And in fact, someone that's, roughly double our age or so and has been in the workforce a long time. to know that like you can still be capable of that, or you can be capable of it now and carry it throughout your 50s, 60s. Like, it's not easy, I'm sure, but he's a hero for being that way.
That's right, but I don't know. It just was something for me where, on this whole pursuit, I'm just trying to figure out, I guess, more of like, how do you have an attitude where you're trying to show people that that you are this loving person who, can be human in a sense where like I go to work and it's like I get in like go mode. You know what I mean? It's like such a different mode that I don't have anywhere else in my life, where it's like literally I'll put my belt on and it's just like time to get shit done.
Right.
And when you're in that mode, it's so easy for anything that gets in your way. Like, they're not a human being anymore. They're just a speed bump that needs to get out of the way. And it's a horrible way to be. I mean, I'll get a lot done, but man, I'll treat people like crap along the way.
Well, I always think of that. So I think of that on like a single day and think like you got to just be a different person to get that day done successfully. Like, you put on that belt and like you're not the same like Ryan that's at home or hanging out with friends. But then you extrapolate that over a lot of time and you pretty much just like meld together, or you can't tell the difference and you become a miserable a-hole. So slippery slope.
It is.
I want to ask you though, shifting gears a little bit, somewhat related. I heard you got trapped in a sensory deprivation tank.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up.
When I say it that way, it's so because I just picture you in there like, hello, knocking on the door and stuff. But what happened?
Well, I didn't get trapped. It was more of like, it was more the fear, because I've been claustrophobic. Like, I don't want to like identify with that, but it's something that I've struggled with, and
most people do.
Yeah. And getting in one of those things, I don't know. You haven't done it before, right? We talked about it, but I don't think you've done it yet.
I've seen them.
Yeah, you get in there, you look at this thing, it's this big white pod, blue light inside with this lid, and you're like, okay, I'm going to get in this thing and close it. A lot of people not a problem with, but for me, claustrophobic as it is, so it was more of a challenge to myself to be able to do something like this, because it's a hard thing to be in an environment where you basically lose all your sight, all your hearing, and you're face to face with what's going on in your brain. So when I was in there last time, what we were talking about was I was in there and something happened with the door where like it just made this really freaky sound, and I like was in there floating, and like all of a sudden that like flight or flight mechanism just went on, lights just blinking everywhere on my dash, where I'm just like, oh my word, check engine lights on, I need to get the hell out of here, right? And it just scared, it just was like I was sitting there in my Zen space, and all of a sudden it was like a tidal wave of fear just was rocking my world, and I'm just like, and I'm just battling this in my mind where I'm like I know that was just a sound. I know that was just a sound. I know Abraham didn't come lock me in this thing, right? Because that's what's going through my mind.
His name's Abraham.
He's awesome. Yeah, float shop. And
I pictured like Trent or like Max Power.
No, but like that was my first time going to this place. I've gone to another place a bunch. My first time at this place, which I'm already a little,
iffy.
Yeah, and then like that's what goes through my mind is like I know what you did last summer, where like she gets locked in the tanning bed, but I'm in the float tank.
It was Final Destination, but I understood.
Is that what? No. I was thinking, dude, I'm pretty sure it was, I don't know. I think it was, I know what you did last summer. It wasn't the first one. I think it was the second.
No,
anyway.
It was Final Destination.
Was it really? Okay,
yeah.
Anyway, that's the point. That's what through my mind is like some twisted dude came and locked me in this thing, and now I'm going to suffocate and die in here, And just being with that was something where it was like this mental storm came over me, and it was like, so what are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, I have to say, first of all, that have you ever seen The Simpsons where Homer and Lisa do sensory deprivation? That's what I imagine. Somebody they get one of the pods repoed and Homer's in it, and so they're rocking it. They're putting it on the loading truck, and he's like, "Oh, this thing's so real! Like, oh, I'm really feeling it." So that's what I pictured happening to you. But I'm still super intrigued by the float tank thing. I definitely want to do it, and I have a friend, an acquaintance we're going to have on eventually to talk about it. His family runs a business for that exact thing. But I was going to try to compare stories a little bit. I didn't have anything too weird happen, but I've done acupuncture twice now.
Oh, nice.
And like, just to give a little bit of the background of things, I feel like stuff like this acupuncture, I don't know, you can't really put it on the same page, but things that are like a little new agey, that I don't really know the full background of, but it's more like, oh, if I could go do that thing for free, I'd do it just to experience it, but like I don't really want to invest too much in it,
Yeah.
So that was the second time that I've done it. First time I was laying down flat, so it was just like pretty relaxing and stuff. Second time I just sat up in a chair like a lazy boy style with my feet up. And I'm just like facing this window. It's just like this big open field. And like you can't move really. Like the way that she placed them, at least this time, like I kept thinking, oh man, I want to pull my phone out, take a picture of these needles in my hand. But it was perfectly placed to where I couldn't do it without disturbing something. And so first I thought, oh man, like it's like I'm going to sit here for 20 minutes. And it's not even that I can't pull my phone out and look at something. It was just, okay, this is the situation. Like I can't really move. I have a window with nothing going on outside. Like just meditate, just relax, you're fine.
Yeah.
But I just had kind of this thought like partway through, because there was another chair that was kind of like in the same position next to me. And I just had this thought of like sitting there with my like fiance, or just having the thought of like, is this what like old age would be like? I had a thought of sitting like in an old folks home, like, sitting there with her, holding her hand, just looking out a window at nothing, and just kind of being like, I'd be fine with this. But bringing it back to being like, no, you're like, I'm not old. I'm 33 and I'm sitting here by myself, and I got 10 more minutes, and I got to go to another appointment, and I got to go to my work, like all those regular life things. I just thought, man, like what a power it is though to be able to stop and harness that, like just go look out a window.
I know.
That sounds really silly and really
It's
simple,
not.
but I was at so much peace after a few minutes of just like, and it wasn't nothing happening outside. I could not even hang my hat on one thing of like, oh, like there's a bird that's kind of like flying around. It was just like, wow, like look at the sky.
Yeah.
This is nice.
Dude, but that's dude, you don't want me to send me down this rabbit trail towards the end. It's something where
Whole episode, I know.
I'll say it just that I really agree with you. If you could just stare out a window and be at peace, man, that is so far from what we're used to. We're at peace when we're in a movie theater just downing a tub of popcorn and sucking on that Coke while we're watching the Avengers kick some ass, not looking out a window. That's just so far from anywhere close to like being at peace and where we're at.
That is funny, because the train of thought there would be, I could look out a window anytime. I'm in nature. I'm outside all the time. That's boring. Like I want to go see a movie where somebody created something I've never seen before. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it makes sense. Yeah. It's logical. But yeah, I would just love to have the power to fully enjoy both those things on somewhat of like the same level.
I know.
I don't think there's going to be a time where I rush home, to go sit and look out the window and be like, I can't wait to do that window sitting tonight. But like, what if you did? What if like that? I don't know. It brought me like a lot of peace and a lot of like just calm.
Dude, because it's your soul just saying, Jameson, look out the window more, man. Look out the window.
Well, see, and that's the other like paradox thing to it is I only did it because I was forced to. So I get home, and you're like, okay, so now you're not forced to. Can you make yourself do this thing that you don't have to do now? Yeah. That's really hard.
It is. But, when you see what it's doing for your soul and your mind, then you're like, dude, I need to look out that dang window.
Do you want to talk about you came across some cool new meditation stuff? Do you want to touch on?
Oh man, I'll just touch on it briefly.
Because it sounds like a magic trick, and I'm not sold.
Yeah, you got to try it, and other people have. I don't feel like I'm kind of late to the party as it is, but I just started trying some of the Wim Hof method. I haven't really got into a ton of the cold stuff, but the breathing stuff, holy moly! If you haven't tried it, Google Wim Hof method breathing. Game changer. And I'll say that because it is literally where you're sitting there breathing and it feels like you're hyperventilating, but man, it is.
It sounds awesome.
It's crazy because like it just, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just like, it just gets your body to this place where you feel at peace. And, Wim Hof is this, I think he's Icelandic guy who's got all the world records for ice dives and ice, because he can endure it. Like he climbed at Mount Everest in his shorts with no shirt on.
With like, David Blaine.
Dude, he's crazy. Like they've done tests with him where he's like been able to like fight off, like they injected him with a disease, and since he could get to this place after doing all this stuff, like he was able to control his immune system.
Oh my gosh.
Of all the scientists were like he didn't get sick. Like he was able to control it.
This I feel like is going to be the theme of 2019 for me, where it's like what is possible. And obviously I have no interest in that type of extreme thing. But to realize that like the human mind and the human body is capable of that, like it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of practice and stuff, but that it's possible at all, like blows my mind.
Dude, and what's amazing about this guy is he shows you how simple it is and how, a lot of these, we talked to Shane about psychedelics and stuff like that, and he is all about like, that's all nonsense because you could get to that place just by doing what I'm telling you.
That's always been the thing that I want to believe in more so, is like those things sound interesting and all that, but if at the same time, if someone credible tells me like you can get there without those things and here's how, like that's more intriguing.
Yeah, and it's not so much a shortcut as much as, I guess, that can be. But
well, drugs would be a shortcut, I feel like.
But that's what I mean. It's like those are a shortcut compared to something like this, which is a lot more a natural, I guess, where you're not taking some crazy cooked up DMT or something.
Right.
But, yeah.
Well, that's the thing we talk about. We might have talked about in the last episode, but with like experiencing God and stuff too. Like I've mentioned Tommy Green before from Sleeping Giant, but he's the first person that really opened my eyes to that concept of here are some steps to open up more of like a lifeline to God. And like even when you hear people say like, well, miracles, like someone asks like why don't miracles that happen in the Bible like those, why don't those happen today? And a lot of people just say, well, you can explain it like this, and God just doesn't, whatever. And I feel like there's some people that say like, well, they can. Dude. Like our eyes aren't open to it, or we're not, like the channels aren't open, that kind of thing. So that's really fascinating.
Oh man, you keep on. You're teasing me with these rabbit holes, man. You're teasing me.
All right, well, then we're out of time.
I can't do it. I can't do it. Anyway, we'll dive.
No, but I feel like that's might be, we're kind of setting the scene, at least in what things I want to do to change things up. Even like take that movie example that we talked about last time, where I want to watch way less movies and read way more books. Something as simple as that, like a goal that a lot of people make. But I'm so fascinated in what that will do to like my chemistry more than anything.
Dude,
like
I'm with
it's that idea of like, what if I just change everything? What's that going to look like?
I know. And I can't wait to hear your response to this breathing that you're going to do after we get done.
Yeah, I might just dial 9-1 and then put something by my hands.
Anyway,
you'll hear about it when you get back from your trip.
Yep, that's right. Well, Wilson, we just want to say thank you for being on the show, and hopefully we could do it again sometime, maybe with Jameson there.
Maybe, if I'm invited. Sounds good. Let's go.
All right, let's get out of here.